Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monsters Den. Today, we are ranking the Hammer Dracula films, all 9 of them. So, Dracula either is in these films or he's mentioned. He's mostly played by Christopher Lee. There's one film where Dracula's in it, but he's not played by Christopher Lee. And there's another film that is a direct sequel to a Christopher Lee film, but it actually doesn't contain Dracula, but they mention him and he's in the title. So that's what we're doing. So we've got 9 films to kind of keep it rolling. We're each going to go on each turn. We're going to list the 4 in order, and we'll go to the next person and we'll go move our way all the way to number 1. So Mr. Allo, kick us off with your bottom 4 in this particular series. Oh, by the way, Chris Allo, Davy Gallagher, Jamie Laszlo, and Dan Brown in the house today.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Pleasure to be here. This is my favorite franchise, as noted by the fact when we did that franchise episode. And for me, I was, this was like a birth thing that I had to do because I am named Christopher Lee. Lee is my middle name. So like ever since I was a little kid and in the 70s, Christopher Lee was huge. So I've always loved these movies. Coming in at number 9 for me, I mean, of these 9 movies, I really like 7. The one I like the least, Taste the Blood of Dracula. I think it's got the coolest name, but the movie's just kind of shitty. Like, the script, they were apparently, when they were doing it, it was written for Ralph Bates. Like halfway through, Ralph Bates turns into Christopher Lee. This movie just kind of sucks, and I don't like it. Number 8, Scars of Dracula. I see Jamie has a rubber bat rig, and they used the worst, cheapest, shittiest looking rubber bat rigs in Scars of Dracula. In the beginning of the movie, that's how Dracula comes back, and at the end of the movie, and the male lead is just kind of forgettable, and the female lead is hot, but I don't remember what her name was. So that's my number 8. Now the ones I really like. Number 7, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, from 1966. Christopher Lee doesn't get any lines in this movie, but for some reason I think that's kind of creepier. Barbara Shelley is normally really hot, but I like the fact how she's like totally downplayed and demure in the movie, but then when she gets bit, she becomes like the super hot, sexy vampire. And I think Andrew Keir is kind of a good replacement for Peter Cushing, because there's no Peter Cushing in this one. And I always feel, the best Dracula movies have Peter Cushing. And that's my number 9, 8, 7. Okay, so number 6, 1968's Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. This one I really kind of like. Rupert Davies plays a really good Monsignor. Barry Andrews, who's the young hero from Blood on Satan's Claw, which is so good. They both make a good hero team, and the two of them kind of make a good replacement for one awesome Peter Cushing, because again, there's no Cushing in this one. I really like that Barry Andrews, the young male lead, he's the hero, but yet he's having problems defeating Dracula because he doesn't have the faith in the, he doesn't believe. And I think that was kind of cool. And the female lead is Veronica Carlson, and sweet Jesus, she is fucking gorgeous. I mean, I met her at Schiller Theater. She must have been like 102, and she looked insane. She was just stunningly beautiful, this woman. And whenever she's on screen, she's totally captivating. So that's my that's my 4.
I think it's safe to say that most of these films have really, really beautiful actresses.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean,
the Hammer heroines, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
I mean, that's the Dracula formula. Christopher Lee, a hot-looking broad, and if you can't get Peter Cushing, you got to get somebody as a decent hero.
Another regular, right? Another Hammer.
Yeah, another Hammer regular.
Get Michael Ripper somewhere at the bottom of the cast.
You got to have Michael Ripper.
Yeah.
David, your bottom 4
lineup, especially with the women when you were a puberty-driven young man.
Yes.
that got you into the theaters. Trust me, you even skipped the snack bar intermission at that point.
So. Bomb for me, and People might think it's a bit heretical, but what better franchise to do so with is The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. Anybody that watches my social media knows I love my Shaw Brothers movies. So it hurts me to say it, but this is a bad Dracula movie and a bad Shaw Brothers movie in one. So, I'm sorry, but and this, I mean, what is that makeup about? I mean,
That
the
is
guy
a
went
bad
on to
Dracula. We'll
absolutely
say that.
nothing.
He's a bad Dracula, that dude.
Yeah.
Well, if you squint, that could be Christopher Lee.
Could be Chris.
No, it couldn't.
Oh.
Or
Could be
listen, if you
Christopher
squint
Lee.
and you have a couple drinks,
If you squint, that could be Michelle
Not enough
Obama. If you
contrast,
squint hard enough. I mean, geez, Louise. No, I'm sorry. This is just awfulness. There's a little bit of camp fun, but at least Peter Cushing get a paycheck is about as good as I can say for that. Next up for me will be Dracula, AD 72. Nice German media book of it there. And they always have funny looks for Christopher Lee on the covers and these posters. I always think they always have bizarre looking pictures of him. The idea of putting Dracula into the modern age was inspired by Count Yorga. You know you're in trouble when you're taking lessons from the Count Yorga franchise. But you do have Stephanie Beacham, star of a billion great cult things, and Carol Monroe, star of a billion more. It's not great. You have the old cliche, Alucard is Dracula backwards. Oh, dude, my goodness. You have all that kind of gubbins here. But it's not awful. There's a little bit of camp fun to be included. Next up for me would be from, as we were discussing, this bizarre set just called Horror Classics. But I'm going to go with Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. From 1970, I think that wasn't it? 1970? Yeah, no, sorry, 1968. As Chris mentioned, it's got some cool things about the idea of atheism, and you can't defeat Dracula in this one because of your lack of faith. I find your lack of faith disturbing, etc., etc. You've got some good rapport between Monsignor Ernest and Ralph from Satan's Claw. That's about as much as you can say for it, really. But it's not a fantastic film, but it's a solid enough little movie. And then next up for me would be in this here set, again from Germany, just the Hammer collection, would be. Oh, it definitely wouldn't be Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. That's a rather different.
That is a good one, though.
That is a good one.
Yes. But it's not a very good Dracula movie, Chris.
No, this is true.
It would be Scars of Dracula. Now, I love Scars of Dracula because Patrick Troughton's brilliant as Clove, but at the same time, it's just a soft reboot of Dracula. It's not doing anything fresh. It is basically just starting all over with the Dracula franchise, just like Horror of Frankenstein was trying to do with Ralph Bates as Baron Frankenstein. So yeah, that's my bottom four.
Cool. Before we go to Dan, Jamie, you like cooking something over there? Is that like dry ice? What do you have to saw like all sorts of?
I got the fog machine going. It's October. Getting spooky over here.
Nice touch.
But it does look like my house is on
focus
fire.
was off.
It just looks like my house is on fire.
Dan, your bottom four.
My bottom four. First, I got to go with The Legend of Seven Golden Vampires. There's really not much I can say about this film other than if you take a half-baked Hammer film and a half-baked Shaw Brothers driven kung fu movie, it does not necessarily add up to a fully baked cake. It's just hard to watch. I mean, and I loved the kung fu craze, Five Fingers of Death, the whole thing when it came out, the excitement of it. This was like Hammer on its last breaths living. And the Shaw Brothers, they had more money than God. As a matter of fact, Run Shaw lived to be 106. I think he was a vampire. But yeah, it's just hard to watch. I mean, the only thing redeemable is some of the production values of Peter Cushing. Great sets because they were made in China for pennies on the dollar. But that's about the extent of it. I have a hard time, it's A or B, but you can't mix A and B and get C. So that's one. That's number 9. Number 8, I got to go with Satanic Rites of Dracula. Why I go with this is if you read the premise of the film, this has got it all going for itself here. espionage, a crazed Chinese woman scientist, a big soulless corporation building built on the church where Dracula was dispatched, and I think in Dracula AD 72. All this stuff, that should be good. And then I'm watching it, and Christopher Lee shows up in like a single room occupancy building with a woman who's tied up on a bed, sucks her neck and disappeared, and you don't see him till later. It was kind of like they just redid that with Will Patton in Halloween Ends. He shows up in a supermarket, and then you don't see him the whole movie until the end. So they must have taken a cue, or he must have had Christopher Lee's agent negotiating his check. But it's just hard to get through. I just, has a lot of premise. I couldn't feel it. Next, Dracula AD 1972 is number 7. Why? Because it's in 1972. Number 2, I think the reason why they went with this, aside from when the comments were made about it, I think when you think about it, this was 14 years after Horror of Dracula or Dracula. That is a whole generation of movie-going audiences. So you have, since movie theaters were always attracted to younger kids and audiences, teenagers, and going up to 30, you in turn had to get something that they could relate to. So they bring it into hip Carnaby Street, London. Everybody looks at it. Christopher Lee has a look on his face like, when's lunch? Okay. And Peter Cushing is running around looking kind of lost, but overall, I mean, it's production values are great, good, whatever it is, just it's out of place. It's out of place. It was like putting Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in the Wild West. It just didn't work that well for me.
I like Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they're out of place. I'm not saying it's not a bad movie.
Okay.
Brides of Dracula. Why? Supposed to be called Disciples of Dracula. And probably because Christopher Lee's not in it. It's a good film as a standalone film. He is mentioned a few times. It's a good film. I'm basing these ratings on my perversions and bucket list things and stuff like this. And that's just why I don't like it. It moves along nicely. David Peel was his name, the actor.
Yes.
Played Dracula. He was like 40 or 45.
He looks a lot younger, yeah.
Oh, he looked like he came from the Tab Hunter Club. This guy looked younger than what he was. But it's a good, solid film. Don't get me wrong. But it's just not, I think, Christopher Lee. I think now I'll never be able to think Christopher Lee without thinking of Chris Allo now. But Christopher Lee and I think of Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, or you've got Peter Cushing. You're halfway there, but that's just not one of my cups of tea, so to speak. And that's my bottom 4.
Ooh. Jamie.
All right. Let's do this. Whoa. Got a bat infestation. Sorry. I need to call Orkin for that.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I'm sure that took all day too. That's very nicely done, Jamie.
Thank you. I had to make the damn pulleys,
Oh, geez.
out of the center of toilet paper rolls. Pinned them up there. Oh, it was a whole thing. Yes, took me a while.
I'm sure it was.
And it didn't even turn out that great.
Listen,
But,
the rubber bats and scars of Dracula.
I wasn't going to do
I was
anything.
going to say, they look better than the ones in that film, man.
Yeah.
You stole
I
the
wasn't going to
show,
do
but
anything until about 2:30 today. So that's what you got. All right. Our bottoms are going to be pretty similar, I think. I'm going with Dracula AD at number 9, 1972. I think it was a good idea to bring them into 1972 at the time. They just didn't execute it very well. I mean, it starts off with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee battling, I think, like on top of a carriage back in the 1800s. And then they do an airplane to tell you we're in modern time for the time. And then they keep Dracula in a castle the whole time. And it looks like it's the 1800s every time you see him. Put him out in the real world. Make him try to use a telephone. Do something with the idea. You got the idea. Now do something with it. And they didn't really do with it. And Caroline Munro is hot in it, but she's in it for what, 3 minutes?
Yeah, what a waste, right?
What a waste, right? All right. And then number 8, Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires. Yes, it's ridiculous. You know what? I don't think it's a good movie, but I'm never bored when I watch it. And you get to see a 60-year-old Peter Cushing not karate chopping, but fighting with these karate guys and doing the kung fu while he's got the fire. It's hilarious. It kind of does drag at times, but the last 10 minutes, I roll with it. But you know what? I was never, ever a kung fu guy growing up. Nothing. I can watch two guys battle each other, but when it becomes a mass of people against another mass of people, it just looks like chaos to me, and I kind of get bored within the chaos of it.
Says the guy that loves every single Marvel movie. That's all they are. There's 300.
Yeah, but it's not kung fu. You know, I guess. I don't know. Right.
Some say potatoes, some say potato.
Yeah, and I know those characters. I grew up with them in the comic book. I still get off looking at them on the screen. Oh my God, look. You know. So number 7, Taste of Blood of Dracula. I think it's the first one rated R. So you got boobs right off the bat. I don't know if they're right off the bat, or do you have to wait for the boobs in this one? Can't remember. And it starts off right where the last one ended, risen from the grave. So it's got that almost like a hatchet thing going on where it starts right off from the last one. And I do like it's got the old guys who love whores and they're bored with whores and they want more than whores. Maybe they want more whores. I don't know. But then you got the dude, what's his name? Lord Courtly.
Ralph Bates.
He promises them things better than whores, and then he drinks the blood, and then he turns into Christopher Lee, and then Christopher Lee's pissed because he's dead. But if he wasn't dead, then Christopher Lee wouldn't have come back from the dead. So you should be kind of thankful that they killed him so you could come back. But he wants revenge for bringing him back. I don't know, but it does have some things to it. Dracula doesn't do a lot. He has a lot of people doing his dirty work. All he does is count the first, the second. He's very much like the Count from Sesame Street in this one. And the next one I have is Satanic Rites of Dracula, which on paper, like Dan said, pretty good idea. It is a little talky, though. Dracula in this is almost like a Bond villain. It's almost like you get to see, what if James Bond had to go against Dracula? It would be a lot like this.
Well, it'd be the man with the golden gun giving him his Scaramanga.
Yeah.
Right. But what I do like the end when Peter Cushing walks into the room and the lights on him and he really can't see if it's Dracula or not. What I don't get is Dracula is, if he's not killed, he's slowed down quite a bit so he can be killed by a Jaggerbush. And I'm watching all these movies in a row, you know. I never watched these movies all in a row. And I'm starting to think, this Dracula guy, I think I could take him. I'm not really scared of him.
Yeah.
Running water, I got a hose. Daylight, okay, it's daylight half the time. I got thorn bushes in the back. 2 pieces, I could put 2 things together and make a cross. I could take this guy. But thorn bushes, really, they kind of make up the rules as they go along, too. And these movies, running water kills vampires.
That comes directly from Bram Stoker. But you're right, there is a sense that if you whistle Dixie the right way, you could probably kill Dracula.
Right. And you think he'd learn his lesson. Is that my 4? That's my 4.
Yeah, I actually, I've seen all these movies countless times, but to do this, I watched them all from the first all the way to the last one for the first time.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Kind of interesting. Yeah, I've never done that before. So my number 9, Dracula AD 1972. Hammer trying to go for a cool 70s psychedelic vibe. Let's bring Dracula and Van Helsing into the modern era. Doesn't really work for me. I like all these films to an extent. To me, this is the least successful. Carolyn Monroe looks gorgeous in it. I wish she was in it more. And Stephanie Beacham looks pretty hot as well. I always remember her from, was it Dynasty or whatever?
The Colbys, yeah.
Or yeah, that kind of thing. But yeah, not terrible. I just don't know if the idea really works or not. Number 8 is going to be the Satanic Rites of Dracula. All right. Sequel to Dracula AD. Batshit crazy film. Again, you know, they're going for the modern thing, some non-horror elements. You mentioned the espionage and all that kind of stuff. Some good violence in it. I think the ending battle between Dracula and Van Helsing is really good, but it just gets a little ridiculous. His death is great. It's a great death scene, I think, for Dracula. One of my favorites, actually. But it's got, to me, it's a little long. It's got some long, boring sections. But, you know, Lee as Dracula talks a ton in this film. So if you're frustrated at some of the early movies where he hardly says anything, well, you get your that and more in that one. Number 7, Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. A lot of fun, kooky movie. I'm also not a big kung fu film guy, but this is cool. You got, you know, Dracula, not a great Dracula. You got Van Helsing, really old here. You got vampires, you got skull face zombies, you got kung fu mayhem, totally hot blonde. It's totally nuts, but I kind of dig it. Number 6, we're gonna go with Brides of Dracula, which set is that in now? I'm losing track of where all these films are. I guess that's in this one. So that's in this set. All right. So that all right.
Yeah, the Universal set, yeah.
Yeah, Brides of Dracula. Even though there's no Christopher Lee here, I think the reason why he wasn't is because he was like, I don't want to play this role anymore. I did it once, that was enough. And they just decided to go on without him, right? And then, of course, they brought him back. But it's a direct continuation of the first film, which I think is kind of cool. Cushing is great as Van Helsing. I kind of like the male vampire lead, as you mentioned before. All the ladies do a good job. It's a really good film, right? It's missing that one element, I think, that would elevate it a little bit more. But really well done film. Could rank higher, but it's my number 6. Back to Chris.
All right, my next one, Dracula AD 1972. I think it's funny that they went to the 70s. I'm sure they did it to save some money. It's definitely that groovy mod 70s thing. There's even that like terrible rock band. It's in all the trailers. Stonehenge. Or
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Caroline Monroe is hot. But not used enough. Stephanie Beacham is hot, but they gave her like the worst haircut.
Oh yeah.
Like every time she comes on screen, like her hair just looks. I can't even tell if it's a wig, but it just looks weird. But
the opening party scene just goes on and on and on and on.
It's padded. It's padded to get to runtime. Yeah.
But for me, getting Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee back together. This is getting Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard back together. So I'm all about getting the tag team back together. So it's Dracula 1972. And I also feel the same way about the next one, Satanic Rites of Dracula. It's really a mashup. Jamie mentioned, he's Dracula's a Bond villain. To me, it's really a mashup of a Hammer Dracula movie, a James Bond film, and the 70s Satanic Panic era. This thing's got, satanic rituals and, the spy stuff and a plot to take over the world, which really, doesn't make sense because then who's Dracula going to fucking bite? And why would Dracula want to marry this broad anyway? Although, Dracula's niece, Stephanie Beacham, was replaced in Satanic Rites of Dracula by, God, what's her name? I can't even remember her fucking name. It doesn't matter, but she's way
Joanna
hotter.
Lumley.
There you go. Yeah, and I think she's way hotter. They hottened her up. So I like that. Next, my number 3, Brides of Dracula. I think it's an amazing movie. I would have loved if they had. Only thing that would have made it better would have been if they had Christopher Lee, but Christopher Lee wouldn't be believable as the younger looking vampire chained to the wall. So that whole premise of plus you would know. You'd be like, you don't know the twist until he's let loose. The audience would know that's Dracula, stupid. Don't let him go. Yeah. So but I think it's really well done. Listen, I know a lot of people that are like, this is the greatest fucking Hammer Dracula movie ever. But I really like it. I wouldn't go that far because I have 2 that I like more. Speaking of which, my number 2, I disagree with everybody. Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires.
Of course.
Yes, it is.
No one's surprised.
But it is trash of the highest fucking caliber.
Okay.
When I was doing my Hudson Horror Show, which I know Dan attended quite a few, and I was able to get 35mm film prints, the first Hammer movie that I was able to get and run was, actually it wasn't Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires. It was the U.S. cut, which was 7 Brothers Meet Dracula, and in front of a fucking sold-out audience, the people went nuts for this fucking movie. Because like Pete said, it's got everything. It's got vampires. It's got zombies. It's got naked broads. It's got kung fu. It's got Dracula. It's got the fucking Chinese or kung fu Dracula. It's got it all. This movie's great. I don't know what's wrong with you guys. We must be looking at different movies. This movie's fucking awesome. And that's my number 2.
It's got a bad version of everything you just said.
Yeah, that's like...
It's a compound of crap.
But Chris...
that's like saying it's porn, but it's bad porn. It's still porn.
Chris makes a very good point about the crowd going wild. And that was a secret about Kung Fu movies. Because you watch a Kung Fu film, you have to... If you're watching this film by yourself, you're wondering why you're wasting your time. You're trying to put the two together. But you put it in a theater with a bunch of people
That's the thing.
and getting excited, you feed off the
It
energy.
didn't do much at the
Absolutely
theater.
correct.
So,
Play better on the big screen. And I agree with Chris. You know,
Were you at that show, Dan? That I don't remember what show I ran it at, but it was one of them.
no, it was you were a packed house. I couldn't even get my free seat in that one. The Dan Deo seat, you know.
Funny.
Yeah, I like the film. I like some of these other ones better, but yeah, I could totally see the appeal, and I would like to see it in a theater like that. I think that would be
Yeah,
fun.
it's a blast.
yeah.
Hey, I would not be at all surprised, Pete, if we see this like 2:00 in the morning this coming Saturday.
Okay, I guess I gotta stay up, right?
I could see it.
And the only thing missing in that film, to be honest, other than Christopher Lee, well, aside from the Dracula, he looks like Joel Grey in Cabaret with his makeup.
Yes.
But the only thing missing was the really bad dubbing for the Chinese guys, in which you were trying to figure out what voice they did on Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoons or something like that. He's had the bad dubbing. That's all that would have made it probably complete. But
Yeah, because that isn't even the Dracula guy's voice. He's dubbed as well. Everybody's dubbed. So it's terrible.
none of these films are bad. It's just none of them are bad at all. It's just, you gotta rank them.
No, I think that's pretty bad, to be honest. I think Chris is on acid again.
Davey, what do you got?
Back. Was it me next or was it Dan?
It's you, yeah.
You're up. I think that's it.
I'm going with Taste of the Blood of Dracula, again from horror classics, the imaginatively named set from 1970. I love Ralph Bates. I think he's one of Hammer's unsung heroes. And it's also got Linda Hayden from Blood and Satan's Claw, Angel Blake herself, lest we forget. It's got Martin Jarvis. It's got Madeline Smith from The Amazing Mr. Blunden and The Vampire Lovers and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. So we've got a kind of all-star a Theatre of Blood. We've got a kind of all-star cast of Hammer people here, and I love the idea of Dracula going after somebody that's it's almost a slasher film with Dracula. They have destroyed my servants, so they shall be destroyed. And then that's the rest of the film. He just goes after them one by one. The first, the second, the third, the end. It's just, that's it. There's no plot after the Ralph Bates stuff, so I'm perfectly happy with it being a slasher film with Dracula, basically.
Who has the ringtone that's Maniac?
Dan.
Anyone here?
What's that?
Am I the only one who heard Maniac, the song Maniac from Flashdance?
Was that? No, I heard some music playing. Oh, no, it's not me. No.
Okay.
No, Dan's a big Flashdance fan. He loves Irene Cara.
I think it's that guy from Scotland.
Yeah. Rest assured, Jamie, I heard it too, so you're not crazy. It's okay.
I think you've all been taking some of Chris's acid, I'm telling you. Next up, I'm going to go with Satanic Rites of Dracula. I've got it a little bit higher than most. I love the nihilistic tone. And Dracula's going for the and again, it comes straight from Stoker and the follow-ups, that Dracula eventually comes to hate his life so much and his existence that he just wants to destroy the earth. And put in it, if there's no blood for him to suck, he will therefore have to die himself, so he'll never be tempted again. So it makes perfect sense to me. As a kind of conclusion of the lead Dracula, and he has that whole speech at the end where he's going, "I have chosen 4 messengers of death, and you, Van Helsing, will be one of the 4." And it's, oh yes, this is what I've been waiting for. Proper showdown between Van Helsing and Dracula, talking and calling each other out in their BS from past lives almost, because it's pretty much the same Van Helsing, even though it's the great-great-grandson or whatever. It's always Van Helsing and Dracula to us, isn't it? So yeah, I like it. And it goes into that trend in the 70s, like Scream and Scream Again, Theatre of Blood had it, the Fibes movies have got it, where for some reason there was always a police procedural in these horror movies. I've never quite found out why, but they've all got it. So I'm quite happy that it shows up here to put it in the context of the era. Next up, I'm going to go with Dracula Prince of Darkness from this Australian behemoth of a Blu-ray box set. I think it's a solid entry. I don't think it reinvents the wheel, but I just think it's a good way to reintroduce 1966. He's not been in the role for 8 years. Christopher Lee's back, and to me, it's the Andrew Keir show. Jamie saw him recently for the first time as Quatermass and the Pit and Our Last Secret Satan. I just love Andrew Keir a bit. one of Scotland's best. And you've got a brilliant lineup with Barbara Shelley, Philip Latham, Roy Kinnear shows up here in one of about 4 of these movies that he pops up in. Then Andrew Keir as a stand-in for Van Helsing. If you can't get Peter Cushing, Andrew Keir will do, take care that I do not have cause to write this way again, villagers. It's like, yes. So yeah, he'll do for me any day of the week. Number 2 for me is, and I've got it higher than most, it's in this Hammer collection, Brides of Dracula. Even though Dracula himself is not in it and Christopher Lee's not in it, I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Because I don't care if it's not Dracula. Dracula's presence is felt, and for me, it's more Van Helsing. So to me, it's Van Helsing too. I don't care if it's not proper Dracula for some people. Peter Cushing is absolutely insane on it. Martita Hunt as the old Baroness, she's brilliant. She's got a wonderful performance. She's from David Lean's Great Expectations. I love their kind of rapport, and I love Van Helsing being more of the investigator here. I mean, how to cure himself with vampirism, and the way he dispatches David Peel's vampire in this is genius. One of my favorite Hammer set pieces of all time with the windmill. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So Brides of Dracula deserves every bit of praise that it has coming its way, and that's easily my number 2.
Cool. Dan.
Me. Okay. Well, my next pick, which I guess would be number 5, is Scars of Dracula. Interesting thing about this film is that this was an attempt, Hammer started sliding and slipping really hard, starting in the early 70s and starting with this. This film was the first film he did that was not financed by American money. And that's why it's on the Thorn EMI label. Thorn EMI distributed because American financing for the films had dried up. So now they had to go in-house, and there were plans of doing this. They made Scars of Dracula as a possible reboot to bring their monsters back. It was doubled actually with, I think, filmed in the same sets as, what was it, Evil of Frankenstein?
Horror of Frankenstein with Ralph Bates.
With Ralph Bates. And, it just, the bats are cheesy. It's your typical storyline, but it also, it was one of the first films to come out on home video in the United States. While looking through my little archive, I came across the
Wow,
Thorn EMI with this great from the company that brought us Roger rising up 3 times from Dawn of the Dead on the Thorn EMI box. This looks like a licensed photo of Christopher Lee. They decided to slap on some copier paper. But that's why this was out early, because it was never tied up in any legalities, and it was a standalone film. Nothing great about it, but that's the basic principle. It was supposed to be used as a reboot because Christopher Lee and them were on edge all the time. And Christopher Lee did not want to be in these films. It wasn't really because they were Dracula films. He was very insulted that they never used any of Bram Stoker's dialogue. They just made this cheesy dialogue up, and he felt like he was just going in repetition. And then, of course, one thing leads to another. But that's Scars of Dracula. I also have it on this, I think. There you go. Is it there too?
Yeah, I had that for many years.
This one.
Yeah,
But I recommend everybody out there, if you don't have any copies of this film, and why I have 3 is beyond me. But if you haven't had this copy, this is actually a worthwhile investment, that Blu-ray. Nice remastering of the print. Some interesting information. I think it's an interview with, it's actually commentary with Ward Baker, and Christopher Lee in the room together. Actually,
Retriv Quatermass in the Pit as well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Shaft Factory Blu-rays are very good. Very well done.
Oh, that was number 5. Number 4, Taste the Blood of Dracula. Why do I have it here? Because everything's going off in different directions. And Taste the Blood of Dracula, I'm looking at my notes. I can't remember everything. But yeah. Oh, this is the one. Let me see. Taste the Blood is... Oh, this is the one they start going to exploitation. This film, like I said, has 3 rich guys, that are bored. And they hang out in the... They look bored in the bordello. They're standing there. And then, of course, they get seduced by Lord Courtly. Oh, we're going to find even more thrills. Like we're in a Clive Barker movie, like it's Hellraiser. And, that never works out well. You're going to go with this guy. And as Chris had said earlier, this was a thing just in case Christopher Lee did not sign. Now, they had made this script ahead of time, ready to roll. And of course, they were going to bring Bates as Dracula in the film. But they came back, Warner Brothers shot back very quickly to them. Here's the deal. No Lee, no distribution in the US. So ate some crow, broke out the checkbook, talked to Christopher Lee, and then he was in the film. So they could retool it with him in there. And that's the main reason why he was in there. I kind of like, because it touches into, any kinds of perversion, depravity. There's no shortage of breasts in this film. And finally, you've got even incest. They hint at it with the father and his one of the three rich guys and his daughter. And you see something was going on. So they're really trying to push the envelope to stay pertinent with the changing times. It kind of falls flat. It's entertaining in that it's not like a rewatch over and over. But once again, there are no bad, really, I think, any Hammer Dracula films. They're just ranked. Next one, Dracula has risen from the grave. Okay. This is the one where Patrick Troughton is doing a cosplay of Paul Kozloff from Free. Patrick
Troughton's in Scars.
There's a scar. No, who's the one that? I'm sorry. Who's the one that plays is the Scars? Is that the one he plays the long hair?
You think Christopher Neame?
God, I can't remember.
Patrick Troughton's Clove in Scars of Dracula.
That Scars of Dracula. Is that where he plays? He rescues the girl in the end. He doesn't want to kill the girl, right?
Whatever. Patrick Troughton's Clove in Scars.
Anyhow, you know the guy I'm talking about. Big white wig, gray wig. Looks like Paul Kozloff from Free. We'll figure it out. But Dracula has risen from the grave. Sorry. No, where am I at here? I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Jesus. Dracula film.
Me too. I'm confused.
We're in the Dracula. I can't remember.
All the Dracula movies storylines kind of interweave.
Risen and the other, they always get mixed up in my head. Taste of Blood and Risen from the Grave. It's like,
yeah, they kind of they play off of each other. Yeah. But Taste of Blood is the one with the three old perverts. Do we know that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. And Risen is Ralph from Blood and Sweat Squad.
Yes, and that yes. And that picks up directly after, which amazes me about this thing, is it picks up directly after Dracula, Prince of Darkness. And when the priest falls down the hill, Dracula's still in the ice. It's supposed to take place a year later. It's like, what is it? Is it frozen up there all the time? Or is it like in the spring, does he thaw and float around and he comes back?
It's Golden Romania.
A whole year.
What's that?
If it was a whole year, maybe he's still.
That's true. Maybe it's back in the winter. But
he's had an adventure in the middle that we didn't see.
Well, same as the thing with Taste of Blood of Dracula. That takes place immediately with the cross scene and the guy who was the trinket dealer or the antique dealer. He falls down at the same time the lovers are up on the. He did not see the rat.
And the clock is ticking. We gotta go.
Yeah. What's your next one, Dan?
Oh, sorry, Jesus Christ! I didn't know. I thought I was doing pretty good here.
You were, and then you went off the rails. So we got to get you back on track.
That's when the Mets wear down, Chris. Anyhow, so the last one here is going to be Dracula. Prince of Darkness is number 2.
Oh,
why? Well, they're making everybody nervous. Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Why do I like it? It was 8 years. Boom. I like the fact he got killed in the ice, and of course, Andrew Keir is the whole mainstay of this thing.
Yeah.
He is the gunslinging holy man, and that's just a great character in general to replace Van Helsing. Yeah. That's it. There you go. Bingo. Done.
Nice.
All right.
Jamie.
Hey.
All right. It is fascinating that this Dracula never turns into a bat. I just wanted to point that out.
True. Yeah.
I'm going with Scars of Dracula next. And if everyone's wondering, they're going so fast. What are they trying to do? Get done in an hour? Yes.
Yes.
We sure are. So this one is released 6 months after Taste the Blood of Dracula.
Yes.
I did some Googling and I couldn't believe that was only 6 months later.
Jamie, do you know what's weirder? In the middle, Christopher Lee also did Count Dracula for Jess Franco. In 6 months, he did 3 Dracula movies.
Well, some of these movies, he's not in it very long, so he could have done his work in 2 days.
Forget it. He's Dracula. He did a lot of them.
But this is the era of Hammer horror where every girl looks like she belongs in the Lawrence Welk show, and every guy looks like he should be in the Kinks. You know, the resurrection kind of sucks with the bat coming in and dripping blood on him, and the killing is kind of dumb with lightning striking him with, I think it strikes him like like something metal that I'm holding. I forget what he's holding, something metal, and then
just a big rod, isn't it?
Yeah, bigger lightning rod of some sort. Everything's in the middle is all right. I like that Clove has a crush on the same girl as Dracula, and then he gets beat. I like the man whore who has to get out of town because, you know, he fucked the wrong girl and he ends up in the Dracula, and then he bangs a vampire chick, of course, because he's the man whore. Then I am going with Brides of Dracula at number 4, which is on this cool set, Hammer Horror. Yep. All Blu-ray, 8 films on this. I like this movie because there's a little bit of mystery to it. You see this, what's his name? Count Von Douchey Dracula, whatever his name is. He is a bit of a douche in this movie. And when you see him, he's chained up, and you kind of think maybe his mother's the vampire and he's held captive, but then, you know, he's let free and he's the vampire. This is why I like it, this movie, because in most Dracula movies, even though I root against Dracula, I kind of like him. You know, I'm not rooting for him, but I kind of like him. In this one, I find him to be a real douchebag, and I want him to die. So that's kind of a cool angle for me personally. And then next one, I am going with Dracula, Prince of Darkness, and it would be higher for me if Dracula had lines. I heard that Christopher Lee didn't like the lines he was given, so he just said he's not going to say anything.
Yeah, Jimmy Sangster says that's bullshit, and he never wrote any for Christopher Lee. So
okay, I did see that it was a rumor, so I didn't know.
Yeah,
this is what I like about this movie. It starts off like a haunted house movie, and I love haunted house movies. You know, 4 strangers go into the big mansion, and you got Clove, the creepy carekeeper or whatever he is, butler, and it seems like a ghost movie. And when it's almost like the original Dracula movie, when they leave the castle, I'm like, I want to go back into the castle. Can we do the rest of the movie in the castle, just like the Bela Lugosi one? But I love the first half so much that it's number 3. Number 2, controversy, maybe. I don't know. I'm going with the first one, Dracula or Horror of Dracula. Depends on what continent you're on. It is a classic. It's a classic for a reason. I think Christopher Lee was really sinking his teeth, no pun intended, well, a little pun intended, into the role because it was new. It was fresh for him. You can tell the ending is iconic. The death of Dracula with Peter Cushing jumping on the table and ripping down the drapes. My issue with it, just a little bit, why it's not number 1, maybe pacing issues here and there, like when the blood transfusion scene goes on a little long, when Peter Cushing is listening to the recording about vampires, goes on a little long. Just, that's me. I mean, if it's your number 1, I mean, it could be my number 1 any other day, but I'm putting it number 2 for now.
Yeah.
Cool. My number 5 is Dracula, Prince of Darkness. I really like this film. I wish there was more Dracula in it. And yeah, he doesn't say anything in it, but he's menacing and frightening in this film. I mean, he's like pissed off. So I really like that part of it a lot. You know, the final scene on the ice is a little ridiculous, but it's kind of cool. I love, my favorite scene in the whole film is when they bring Dracula back from the dead and they hang the guy upside down and gut him.
And it's horrible.
So sinister.
It is.
Which they off in one of the Nancy movies. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Hazel Court's great in it. The other chick who plays the daughter, she's quite attractive too. So I like it. Good, fun film. Number 4 is Scars of Dracula. You know what I like about this? He's so sadistic in this film, like big time. Got great female leads, extra blood, extra sex, fun film. The sets look really good. I think Dracula's demise at the end is really, really well done. Even with the weird his scream on a loop that just goes on and on and on for like 3 minutes. I'm like, they couldn't change that up a little bit, but fun film. I dig it. Number 3 is Taste the Blood of Dracula, which is on this set here. And here is the cover right there. Another good entry. Ralph Bates steals every scene he's in. He's awesome. I love him when he's in the Hammer films. Linda Hayward is delightful. Great seeing her in here. There's a lot of neck biting in this film. You ever notice that? Like some of these films have a lot of close-ups. You see like Dracula pull away, he's all bloody. That's what I want to see. And I like the climax a lot. So that's number 3. Number 2 is wherever the hell that is. I guess it's in this one. Dracula's Risen from the Grave, whatever. Oh, it's in this one as well. In here. I did not think that this was going to rank so high for me, but in rewatching, I'm like, this is got tons of Dracula in this film. The female lead is great. Lots of blood. Another really fun ending. And for me, if it wasn't for the first film, I think I get the most enjoyment out of this one right here. So that's my number 2. And I think for everybody except for Jamie, I think we know what number 1 is, right?
Yeah. This was easy pick. I know, Pete, when we did our top 10 favorite horror movies of all time, I think I was the only one that included a Hammer movie, and that was it. Horror of Dracula. Great. To me, it's the greatest vampire movie of all time. I think Christopher Lee's the greatest Dracula of all time. Jamie mentioned, God, the iconic, ripping down the drapes. I mean, that's been stolen in Fright Night and how many other friggin' movies over the years. And I know when I was a little kid and I was going to do, my mom entered me into religious studies after school as a kid, which up here they call it CCD. I don't even know what it stands for, but some kind of religious thing. I remember my mom pulled me aside. She's like, all right, I signed you up for CCD. And I really didn't want to go, but I had to. She's like, well, you know how to make the sign of the cross, right? I'm like, yeah, of course. She goes, all right, let me see you do it. So I went like that because I saw Peter Cushing take the candlestick, candelabras and make the sign of the cross, which again has been used, in a million movies. And I just think to me, it's flawless. I love even too how, when you watch it, Jonathan Harker is the setup. Looks like he's going to be the hero, and then he gets killed off. And you could use the analysis that that's kind of like Psycho, but like 2 years before Psycho came out.
Yep.
I'll jump straight in then if it's my number 1. Dracula, 1958, of course. This is the quintessential Hammer team. You have Terence Fisher, you've got Jimmy Sangster writing it, you've got James Bernard doing the wonderful score. Everybody's on form. The only person I think who lets it down slightly is Michael Gough, who doesn't seem terribly fussed at his wife's on death's door. If he thought that he was slumming it in a movie, he really let you know. But this to me starts out with Jimmy Sangster's genius is that he takes Stoker, takes the highlights, and then guts the rest of it. Mm-hmm. The whole stuff about the Demeter and how can Hammer afford to do a big thing about a ship that travels? Okay, we'll just ignore all that. It's all going to be set in a small place. Jonathan Harker's a bit of a born estate agent. What should we do? He already knows about Dracula and he's already here to kill him right at the start of the movie. Completely reversing the novel. So it guts the story of Dracula down to its more primal elements and changes it to be a more salacious story, which following the Curse of Frankenstein is exactly what you need. And then halfway through the film, when it needs a little bit of a pick-me-up, you get Van Helsing, who is just, as much as I think this is the greatest vampire movie of all time with the greatest Dracula, I think it's also the greatest Van Helsing of all time with Peter Cushing. I mean, he takes no prisoners, but at the same time, he's kind and warm when he needs to be, when he's comforting whoever needs to be in that situation. He's great at doing we must destroy the shell for all eternity so that evil may not return. He's doing all this great stuff. He sells you completely. And I think, unlike Jamie, I'd say that the scenes like the talking into the recorder and the wax cylinder, those are necessary because it lets you cut out a lot of the stuff that people then would only have known from the Bela Lugosi stuff and think, because he in those scenes says a lot of what we know about vampirism is absolute bullshit. So those scenes allow you to just He's not going to turn into bat in this movie, folks, so just accept it and move on. And I'll let you cut 20 minutes from the end of the film, which is genius. It's an absolute genius move of Jimmy Sangster to take the primal parts of Dracula, make a brilliant Dracula film that is completely non-Stoker, but yet 100% absolutely Dracula with the greatest cinematic pairing. Again, being a horror hound, I would say so, but for me, Cushing and Lee, the greatest cinematic pairing in history. So, yeah, essential. Number one with a bullet.
Really a shame too when you think back now that you didn't really see enough Dracula and Van Helsing in this whole series, right?
That's why I love that's why I love
also-
movies like Horror Express, where you do get to see them hanging out a lot more.
Yep. Dan, a couple thoughts on this film?
Yeah, real quick. I think it is the most perfectly adapted large novel trimmed down to run. And I think even though I agree with Davey is about the expositions about talking on the machine and stuff like this. But other than that, I think this is a fast-paced action film.
Mhm.
They take all the high points. They left out Renfield. They mentioned Dr. Seward. You don't see the cowboys, all the characters that were in Francis Ford Coppola, which is in the novel. But it's a perfectly crafted, edited down, and it is a perfect film. If anybody saw it in the theater, you're gonna be entertained. And the dynamics, even though there are not many scenes together, you just know that although they're not on the screen together, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, they make an incredible team. And just in closing with my thoughts on this, Christopher Lee only appears for 79 minutes on screen in all the films he's in. Everything, 79 minutes, of which ranging from 14 and a half minutes in Scars of Dracula down to Prince of Darkness, 7.5 minutes of screen time, which is a testament, regardless of every differences he had with Hammer, it's a testament how powerful his screen persona was. And going to Brides of Dracula, Peter Cushing, that is like the Van Helsing, I'm going to kick ass movie type of thing. And that was his
straight back to Stoker. That's Dracula's barely in the novel after the start, barely in it at all.
Right. So that's it. But that's why Prince one. The copies that Davey and I have, if anybody has a Region 2, this gives you the 2 restorations of it. It gives you 3 documentaries. And finally, there's the Japanese footage in which they found the infamous face melting scene.
Yeah.
If you're region free, get that version, not the Warner Archive one.
For like
Get
$20
that
to
one.
$25 out there. I don't know if the Warner Archive gave us the, what do you call it though?
Doesn't have the alternate cuts.
Doesn't have the alternate cuts. Okay, but that's it. Or Dracula, or Dracula as we call it.
Yeah. All right, Jamie. So which one did you pick over that?
Can you remember which one I left out?
I don't.
No.
Dracula Has Risen from the Grave is my
Okay,
favorite.
there you go.
Ooh.
And I was watching it, when I was watching all
My number
these
2.
beginning to end, and this one was just about over. I said out loud in this room, that's the best one. That is the best one. And I went on a website that, because before we did this, I said, let me see what other people say, ranking Dracula Hammer movies. And I looked at a few, and the main list, the first, I can't remember what website it was, but the first thing that came up had this at number 1 as well. So at least me and that person's on the same page. I like the ideas in this movie a lot. I like the idea, like you guys said, how the atheist couldn't kill him because he was an atheist. I like the idea. It's so cool that even though Dracula is dead, that the castle that still touches the I guess the shadow of the castle still touches the church and taints the church, which is kind of like a cool little idea. And I'm a character guy. I love characters. I can watch a movie with no plot if it has great characters, and I like these characters the best. I like the whoring barmaid woman. I like the guy Paul, who I kept saying when I was watching it last week, 1968 Hugh Grant, because he kind of looks like Hugh Grant. If Hugh Grant,
Barry Andrews is better likable, yeah.
I think Dracula is quiet enough to be mysterious, kind of like Prince of Darkness, but talks enough to not be a mute. It has some scary images, like the whoring barmaid, her corpse. I think the story flows the best of all these Dracula movies. When Dracula's pissed, I believe him. He wants revenge in some of these movies, a lot of these movies. This time, I believe that he wants revenge. And the death scene is definitely, it might be better than the drapes coming down. because most of the time the death scene is like, yay, this death scene scares the piss out of me. It's frightening when he lands on that cross. And I think it's in the next, what's the movie after this, where the guy falls off, this salesman or something, he sees it again and he's watching it from above. It's frightening. So frightening they did it twice. So yeah, it's my favorite. And there you go. Oh, I love the poster. The poster is a black and white poster with a girl, and you see her neck with a pink Band-Aid, and it says Dracula has risen from the grave. And because the Band-Aid there, it goes, obviously, I would buy that poster and put it in this room. I'd take something down for that
I was
one.
gonna say, you got room on that wall for it?
I'll take something down for it. I got 4 Kevin Smiths. One of them can come down.
Yeah, I think they can all come down, to be honest. It's,
I don't have much else to add because you guys have said it all perfectly. Yeah, I mean, the first one to me is still the best. It's as Dan said, it moves really, really quick. I think it's got the most menacing Christopher Lee. And I mean, first film, and he's got, those bloodshot eyes and blood dripping from those menacing fangs and those awesome close-ups. It's just so good. The whole cast is great. I don't think that the Van Helsing Dracula pairing was ever as good in any of the other films they appeared in together as they were in the first one. But that's neither here or there. But so there you have it.
60 minutes on the button almost.
Chris, look at that. Did we do it? All right. Chris got to go. You got to go pack and get ready for a big weekend, right?
Yes.
Oh, this is the 24-hour marathon thing, right?
Yeah, and Iron Maiden tomorrow. Yeah, so
yeah, and I've got Deep Purple and Blue Oyster Cult on Saturday. So
nice, very cool, very cool. So there you have it, everybody. Ranking the 9 Hammer Dracula films. Some of you may be asking, oh, but there's other vampire films that Hammer did.
Yes.
You'll circle around to them at some point in the not too distant future. We'll rank those other 4 or 5, whatever it is, and Twins of Evil and Vampire Circus and those couple
Dracula.
Vampire Lovers,
the Stein trilogy, Captain Kronos. I think there's a lot more than 4.
There's probably 6 or 7 actually. Yeah, so we'll get to them. So thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Rank them as you like them in the comments below, and we'll see you next week here on the Monsters Den. For Dan Brown, Davy Gallagher, Jamie Laszlo, and Chris Allo, I am Pete Pardo. For those of you heading to Phoenixville, Pennsylvania for Exhumed Horathon, we'll see you there. Otherwise, have a good weekend, everybody. Take care.